When it comes to a top tier math or physics or science education, there's a reason some people will hide your identity. In some cases, it's for exploitation. In some cases, it's for protection. If you're the kind of guy or gal who can look at a newspaper or go online and look at a bunch of statistics on sports and give someone the edge on a bet, they will try to exploit you. You will think like, who does that? A bunch of crackheads or drug dealers or thug life, drug life people in the hood. Those people are interested in good stock pickers because they need to launder their money into stocks or bonds or something. As well, they want investment advice, but so does the Police Benevolent Association. They get somebody in jail who is real bright and has a good math background. They like to ask a few questions. What kind of questions they ask? In bull market, everything's golden, but in a recession, people start worrying about what could happen to the market, right? Because growth is what drives this growth in the market, the stock market, right? It drives good returns, and good returns lead to good dividends, and good dividends push the price higher, right? But there's some staples, right, that you could tell somebody about in a recession. People still need laundry soap, the Unilever or something. People still need they still need food. There's some companies that aren't going to go bankrupt, and there's some economies around the world that aren't necessarily in recession. So some economies, some industries are more vulnerable to a U.S. recession or a worldwide recession or an overseas recession in a place like China or Europe. Like the ag industry exports a lot to China, or something like in the parts industry or the car industry or something. There's like a certain kind of susceptibility to the ill effects of a recession, right? But there are people who get nervous about their 401k, and they get nervous about their pension funds and things like that. And they're union people, and they're cops a lot of times that maybe aren't union, but their dad's union, their mom's union, their brother's union. They're working class people with a lot of power and influence, and they can go real corrupt when it comes to exploitation. If you're at MIT, you understand. I give you a little proof, but there are people who can pick 90% of the games in the first round of the March Madness tournament, right? So there's 4 games of play-in games, they used to call them. It's you win in that round, and you can play in the first round, right? And then there's 64 teams, right? There's 32 on each side and 16 in each corner. And so in the first round is 64, and then 32, 16, Elite 8, the Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final 4, and the championship, right? Well, if you pick 90% of games, you don't have to pick a bracket to win. You can go to a sports book and bet 90% of the games you're going to win, right? Odds might be different on each game, right? Because obviously there are easy games to pick in the first round. But some people can't do that. Why are the odds different? Well, in the first round, the number 1 team in a bracket, in a section of the bracket, like the West or the East or something, will play the number 16 team. And those 16 teams are closer to the 60 to 64th ranked teams in the tournament, and even as high as the 68th ranked team. So it's easier to pick a winner there. As you get closer to the toss-up games, it's harder. Between an 8 and a 9 is more difficult. But if you look at the numbers, like a size advantage, a shooting percentage advantage, a rebounding advantage, a points after rebound advantage, like a defensive advantage, or a team that scores a lot of points and didn't lose very many games but didn't play in a real tough bracket. Sometimes you can find the upset, and you can also find who's going to win those 50-50s, the 8 and the 9 team that are in the middle of the bracket. They always say there's one 5-12 or whatever that's going to be an upset. So far, there have been 12 games, and I picked 11 of them, including 3 upsets. The upsets are like a 5-12, a 7-10, and some similar upset, right? And I picked other upsets? Yeah. I picked an upset for Maryland, but they're always trying to pin me as a terrapin, somebody who was slow, and a Maryland business grad, and so I don't like listening to that noise. I would have had 12 out of 12 so far, but I don't want to listen to the noise from a bunch of Maryland grads or people who took classes in the Army or some nonsense like that. I can look at the numbers and pick all that, and I'd also tell you that there's a reason people would try to pick on me, right? That if you can pick, then people want to pick on you. They want to hit a spaz alert everywhere you go, and they'd rather have you sit in a state hospital or prison and pick games for them. There's cops that are willing to put somebody in jail or prison and get them into a program, not because they need to go to a mental health facility or a jail or a state hospital, but because they want to control that person. And if they can convince a judge that they need to be under surveillance 24/7 in their room, in front of their television, everything, then they can get some hot picks. If I sit there and look at the stock market and talk about it, they get picks, right? And people say, well, I like cops. They should get that. No, they should. They should pay for that. That's why you go down to Goldman Sachs, Smith Barney, or wherever you want to go, and you get investment advice. You don't have to sign a non-disclosure agreement with your broker. You can walk in there, ask him a few questions, you buy a stock or whatever and walk away. He's happy, you're happy. Plus you got all the advice you need to help your family or your friends or your labor union make good decisions. And most people, that's how they make decisions. But there are some unscrupulous people. They don't like certain classes of people, certain types of people, or they believe somebody's like a war faker, somebody's an impersonator, and they don't understand that somebody like a CIA, that's their job to go out and learn how to impersonate people under very stressful situations, what we say, under duress. And they don't understand how like a CIA officer would talk in a way that seems like he doesn't have an advanced degree or good command of English or something. But there are people in the CIA who have to get down there on the same level as criminals and convicts sometimes, or people who don't have a lot of education. And if you sound like you got too much Harvard mouth going on, then you might not be able to make it. You know what I'm saying? You might need to sound clear so that a foreigner could understand you, but you don't need to discuss things that they can't understand, including big words that they can't understand, right? So you keep it simple, stupid. That thing they say, kiss, that's something you remember. They just show you a picture of Ace Frehley or something, and you'd go, oh, okay, I know he's talking too much over the guy's head. Yep. There's a lot of unmentioned things at CIA. They teach you communications. You have to connect the dots to understand a message, but you don't have to blurt out an answer if you're trying to figure something out. If you need clarification, they'll point to something else for you to solve. It's a lot of Rubik's Cubes, but there's a reason. You don't want everyone to know what the hell you're doing.